The photo was dated 3 years before I signed the lease, and the woman standing at my kitchen sink with her back to the camera was wearing my exact shirt. My exact shirt. The one I bought last spring. My name is Kara. I am 31 years old. I moved into the house on Millhaven Street 8 months ago, and I want to be very clear about something before I go any further. I am not someone who looks for things that aren't there. I have never believed in anything I couldn't hold in my hands. The house was cheap, old but solid. The landlord, a quiet man named Gerald, told me the previous tenant had left suddenly, which I took to mean they couldn't pay rent. That happens. I didn't ask follow-up questions. Everything was fine for the first 6 months. Quiet neighborhood, decent heating. I set up my dark room in the basement. I shoot film photography as a hobby, have for about 10 years, and that became my favorite room in the house. I shot a roll of the house itself right after moving in, documenting the place the way I always do when I move somewhere new. Loaded the film myself, shot the roll over 2 days, developed it myself in the basement. 24 exposures on the roll. I'd shot the living room, the kitchen, the upstairs hallway, the yard. Normal documentation photos. I printed them all and pinned them to the corkboard above my bench. That was when I noticed something wrong with the kitchen shot. I had been alone in the house, both days of shooting. I was certain of it. I would have noticed another person. You notice another person. I told myself it was a double exposure. That happens with film. Film has quirks. I developed the roll myself. I could have made a mistake. I pulled the negative strip from my sleeve and held it up to the light. The figure was on the negative. She was real. She had been there when I pressed the shutter. I still told myself it was an exposure error. Something from a previous use of the roll somehow bled through. It wasn't possible, but it was more comfortable than the alternative. I set the print aside in a drawer and tried to forget about it. I almost managed it. 4 months later, in February, the boiler in the basement started failing. Gerald sent a repairman, an older guy named Walt, who'd apparently done work on the house before. While Walt was checking the pressure valves, he noticed my darkroom setup. He said, and I remember this word for word, "Oh, you're into photography too. The woman who had this place before you, she was the same way, spent all her time down here." I asked him what she looked like. He described a woman, mid-30s, dark hair, slim. He said she had a real nice camera, old style. He did not know where she had gone. After he left, I stood in the kitchen and looked at the sink. Then I went to the drawer and took out the photograph. I looked at the figure in it for a very long time. Dark hair, slim build. The shirt I now knew was mine. You have to understand, I needed to know who she was. I called Gerald. He was reluctant, but I pushed, and eventually he told me the previous tenant's name, Miriam. She had rented the house for 2 years and then simply stopped responding to messages. He'd found the place empty and clean when he came to check. No forwarding address. I asked if Miriam had left anything behind. Gerald paused. He said she had left some things in the basement and he had meant to clear them out but hadn't gotten around to it. He thought they were behind the boiler. I had never looked behind the boiler. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because I had set up a dark room directly across the room from it and spent hours down there, and I had never once looked behind the boiler. I went down that night with a flashlight. I squeezed behind the boiler. The heat was stifling. The box was there, an old shoebox, taped shut, and beside it, a camera bag. A nice one, old style, just like Walt had said. The camera bag held an old medium format camera, the kind that produces square negatives. Beautiful piece of equipment, and inside the camera, a half-used roll of film, 12 exposures, maybe 9 or 10 already taken. I will tell you what was in the shoebox in a moment. But first, and I need you to follow me to the next part, because this is where everything stopped making sense, I took that camera upstairs. I put it on my kitchen table, and I stared at it. A half-used roll of someone else's film. I am a photographer. You do not leave film unfinished. Every photographer I have ever known says the same thing. So I developed what was on that roll. I used the chemicals I already had. I developed the negatives and printed the images, and I hung them on the line in my darkroom, and then I turned on the white light to look at them. The first 3 photos were of rooms I recognized immediately. My living room, my upstairs hallway, my bedroom taken from the doorway. They were taken at night. You could see the darkness through the windows. They were taken while I lived here. My furniture was in them. The 4th photo was my darkroom, shot from the top of the stairs, looking down. The red safe light was on. And at the bench, with her back to the camera, stood a woman with dark hair. Her hands were moving across the surface of my bench. The fifth photo was my bedroom. In it, I was asleep. Someone had been in my house, at night, with a camera, for long enough to shoot multiple rooms, to wait at the top of my basement stairs, to stand in the doorway of my bedroom while I slept. I sat down on the basement floor and I did not move for a while. I tried to think clearly. The camera had been behind the boiler. The film inside it was partly used. Whoever shot these images had left the camera behind or lost it or been interrupted. I had not opened the shoebox yet. I went and got it from beside the boiler and I brought it to the workbench and I cut the tape. Inside the shoebox were photographs, a lot of them, printed on the same paper I use from what looked like the same chemicals. Whoever had left them knew their way around a dark room. The first photos I pulled out were of the exterior of the house, shot from the street at night, from different angles, then interior shots, then a set I didn't recognize, a different apartment, small, a single room with a futon and a stack of books and a large corkboard on the wall. On the corkboard in that apartment, I could just make out images pinned to it. I took the photograph to my loop and studied it. The images on that corkboard were photographs of a woman, the same woman in dozens of photos. The woman being photographed, the subject, the one pinned to the board in that apartment, had dark hair, was slim, mid-30s, and the more I looked, the more certain I became. That was Miriam, the previous tenant. Whoever had lived in that apartment had been watching Miriam, and then Miriam had vanished. I kept pulling photographs out of the box. They got older, I thought. The paper felt slightly different at the bottom, the contrast higher, the style changing. Photographs of the house from the outside, photographs of Miriam, then photographs of someone else inside the house, a different woman, older, someone before Miriam. At the very bottom of the box was a photograph of a kitchen, a woman with her back to the camera standing at the sink. It was dated on the back, written in pencil, more than 20 years ago. The woman's posture was somehow familiar, that particular curve of the spine, the way the hands gripped the sink edge. I understood then what I was looking at. This was a record. This house had been watched for a very long time. The women who lived here, one after another, had been observed and documented. And the camera, the record, the archive, all of it had been left behind here in this house, as if the watcher had moved on and would return. I called the police that night. 2 officers came. They were polite, and they looked at the photographs, and they took some of them away as, they said, materials for a welfare check on the previous tenant. They told me to put better locks on my doors, which they said in a tone that suggested the problem was solved. It wasn't. I changed the locks. I put a chain on the basement door from the inside. I pulled the curtains, and for a week I checked every room before I slept. I did not go back to the dark room. I thought, if I just stop looking, I stop finding things. 2 weeks later, I made myself go back downstairs. I needed to develop a roll I'd shot for work. I do some freelance portrait work and the client was waiting. I went into the dark room and loaded the developing tank and processed the roll the way I have done hundreds of times. I hung the negs, let them dry, made my proof sheet. The client's portraits were fine. The whole roll was fine. Except the very last frame on the roll, which I had not taken because I never finish a roll. I always leave 1 or 2 frames, showed the exterior of my house at night, shot from across the street. The lights in my bedroom were on. I had been home. Someone had used the last frame on my roll. My own film, loaded by me, processed by me. I had left the camera in my bag, sitting right there in the dark room for 2 weeks while I avoided going down there. And someone had opened the bag, used the camera, and put it back. They had been in this basement, in the dark, while I was upstairs, asleep, with my lights on, and they had documented it, the way you document something you are keeping a record of. I am not going to tell you I confronted someone. I am not going to tell you I solved it. What I am going to tell you is what I did next, because it is the only thing I'm not embarrassed by in this whole story. I bought a motion-activated digital camera, no film, no chemicals, no dark room, and I hid it in the basement, pointing at the space behind the boiler. I set it up on a Wednesday evening and I went upstairs and I waited. I will tell you what was on that camera, but I need you to follow me because the next part, what I found behind that boiler the following morning, is the part that still wakes me up at 2 in the morning 3 months later. Follow for part 2 because I cannot tell this part without showing you the image first. Thursday morning I went down to check the camera before I had eaten, before I had even made coffee. My hands were shaking and I told myself it would be nothing. A rat, a draft that had moved something, anything. The motion camera had been triggered. 41 photographs taken between 2:47 in the morning and 3:12 in the morning. 25 minutes. Someone had been in my basement for 25 minutes while I slept directly above. I scrolled through the photos on the camera's small screen. Most of them showed the area behind the boiler empty, but photograph number 7 showed a pair of legs from the knee down standing beside the boiler. Photograph 19 showed a hand reaching around the boiler's edge, fingers spread. The hand was holding something. A camera, a film camera, square body, chrome lens. They had come back for the camera. The camera I had taken upstairs, the one sitting on my kitchen table for 2 weeks before I moved it back to the dark room. They had come back and they had gone to where it used to be and they had not found it and they had left. But here's the thing. Here's the thing I come back to at 2 in the morning and I cannot find a way through. The camera, Miriam's camera, or whoever's camera, was on my kitchen table when I developed those photographs, and then I moved it back to the darkroom. The last frame on my client's roll, the photo of my house, taken from across the street while my lights were on, was taken during those 2 weeks. Which means whoever came into my darkroom and used my camera had done so, while the camera they came to retrieve was sitting 15 feet above their head on my kitchen table. They were in my house, and they did not go into the kitchen. They had every opportunity, and they did not go into the kitchen. And I need you to think about what that means, because it means one of two things. Either they did not know the camera was there, or they did not come for the camera. I moved out 6 weeks ago. I am staying with a friend, and I have not told her the whole story. I took Miriam's camera with me. I have not opened it. There are 2 frames left on the roll inside it, whatever Miriam had loaded when she left, and I have not taken them and I have not developed them, and some nights I am not sure I ever will. But last night my friend asked me what was in the camera bag I brought over. I told her it was just equipment. She said, "That's funny," because she had heard something from inside it around 3 in the morning, like a shutter clicking, just once.